We only have one comment on the YouTube, and that was my great 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 grandfather was the inventor of marshmallow fluff.
Jeff Paquette will randomly send me messages when I can tell when he's listening to our episodes.
Yep.
It's a W, not a double V. The name itself screams woobly boobly. Also, I find it concerning that Canadians don't grow up on fluffer nutter sandwiches, which would be peanut butter and the marshmallow, I'm assuming. So I can always tell because he'll always send me little. I do the same thing to him when I'm listening to his episodes. I'll send him as I hear something. I'll send it to him.
But that's from the Tow Business Podcast.
That's the Tow Business Podcast. Yeah,
you're a good dog.
I love the flannel shirt and the basketball shorts.
They're the only pair of shorts I own. Okay.
I
only own one pair of shorts.
I mean, I'm wearing very similar shorts right now and just a t-shirt.
And it's laundry day. That's the only reason why I'm not wearing jeans.
Shit. I gotta start my laundry before I leave after.
Yeah,
I have now got my rhythm down with my uniforms that as long as I do it on Saturday or Sunday, I always have enough for the entire week. Like I was doing it like Wednesday, and then like it was just all over the place. I finally nailed the routine down, and then I keep forgetting about the routine. So
that happens. It happens to the best of us.
Routines and towing are meant to be broken.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, Towman G, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, friend, and former coworker, the man with very strong opinions, Mr. Plain Guy.
What is going on, G? What is going on?
Oh, here's hoping my internet holds up this episode, because last episode, it was dog shit.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Well, that being said, maybe it is a good thing that we aren't doing our live episode for the 150th episode. I want to personally apologize for that. That was completely a decision on my part. Unfortunately, in August, my family shares a lot of birthdays, like a lot. And my family put together, without my knowledge, while we were planning this live and were unable to move, a dinner, a get-together to celebrate all the birthdays. Right. So there's the 3 that we celebrate here, and then there's a couple that we kind of throw in there a little farther out in August, because all in the same month of August, we have myself, my grandfather, my nephew, all about the same time. Fun fact, my grandfather is exactly, almost to the day, 50 years older than I am.
Wow.
And my nephew is 20 years younger than I am. So there's a 70-year gap between them, almost to the day. Like we were all within like 10 days.
Oh, so your nephew's what, 25 now?
Easy, guys. 15. Hardest working 15-year-old I've seen in a long time. Definitely doesn't take after his uncle, because at that age I was definitely not the hardest working 15-year-old you'd ever find.
Yeah.
And my grandfather is the hardest working 85-year-old. Who only recently retired, I think 3 years ago when he was like 82, or 4 years ago when he was 81. From driving dump truck his entire life, and it was only because he just didn't have the patience to deal with the drive test people anymore. And he had to deal with them, I think, every year. So happy birthday to them. Happy retirement to my grandfather, who continues to not stop, or he's one of those guys, unfortunately, once he stops, he's going to die. So he refuses to stop. And at 85 years old, I mean, the guy's still in better shape than I am most days. So props to him. So yes, that is the reason that we canceled the live episode. We are going to look at reschedule. I'd like to do something maybe around the tow show time, like, like we've done where we recorded, maybe do a recording, but also do a live together, right from the tow show, maybe on one of the nights. That's kind of the idea that I've kind of been bouncing around, just because scheduling prior to that is going to be very tough. Obviously, like most towing companies, we've gotten into that little bit of a lull time. I don't know if you remember, G, normally this time, once school goes back until winter hits, it can be a bit of a downtime. So we are seeing a decrease, especially on weekends and nights and everything. So it's kind of freed up a little bit. of time for scheduling with the show and that.
In my area, it would be during the week. The weekends are still hectic as hell because of all the tourists traveling.
Yeah, but so are we with the 401 corridor, but they're just not
Yeah.
doing the family vacations aren't going on, which is what we would see, I guess, a lot of our volume on.
See, for me, I'm up in cottage country, so a lot of
Mm.
people are still heading up there as you're coming into the fall. A lot of them are going and closing the cottages
until
so
Labor Day. Yeah.
even after Labor
Yeah.
Day, a lot of people will keep them open to the end of September, into October when they're actually closing it up because some people are diehards.
Yeah.
You're like,
That
I'm
is
paying
true.
a second mortgage. I'm going to use it as much as I can.
I mean, and rightfully so. I don't think
so.
I could blame anyone for that. So it is a good time to mention, before we get too deep into it, questions, comments, concerns for the show. Any opinions on things you might want to see in an upcoming live show if we can get it done closer to the tow show in Ontario. You can visit us at www.towinglife.ca. Don't forget, you can also get your merch while you're there. You can email us at thetowinglife@gmail.com, or you can visit us on Facebook by searching at the Towing Life Podcast. If you are on the YouTube side watching, welcome. And don't forget, you can always comment right down below. Hit that like, hit that subscribe while you're there. Get notifications every time a new episode drops every week. So
you've had a busy week by the sounds of it, because you've got our show list all just jam-packed with stuff.
I've been motivated. Mainly, fun fact, a lot of the motivation that comes to this show and the reason that sometimes makes it hard and easier to record weekly is the fact that we experience so much in a week, every week. And that experience comes directly to this show, whether it be situations that we're going to talk about today, ideas for equipment, different things like that. So yes, I have had a busy week, right? I have, in the most recent time, had quite the terrible luck, and I think we've talked about it, with damage claims.
Yep.
So one thing we are seeing in a lot of new vehicles is the going away with neutral releases.
Yep.
Right? BMWs, there's like a skid plate underneath that you have to remove and put in an Allen key. A lot of these new electric cars, short of the Teslas that have a tow mode, providing you have 12-volt power, there's a lot of newer stuff that the engineers are really not taking into account on the towing and recovery side of things that is making our job more difficult.
Yep.
One personally has led to a damage claim. It was a fully electric vehicle that was locked up. All four wheels locked up at a charging station, not a good angle to get to it. And it was an operator lapse in judgment. They ended up grabbing a tie rod. So, fun fact for operators out there, be wary, because new vehicles, inner tie rods are becoming part of the entire rack and pinion. This is the second time that I have seen this. So if you bend or break an inner tie rod, you are not just replacing an inner tie rod like you were back in the day. You are replacing the entire rack and pinion.
Ouch.
Yes. My most recent claim was on a 2024 Kia, I think it's a Kia EV6. Right? I got this power generating station that just bricks these cars every time they plug in. And I had an operator who made a terrible mistake and was not secured. It was pouring rain, did not grab the control arm, actually ended up grabbing as well the control arm and the tie rod. When you've got a vehicle fully locked up, even with skates, and you pull on that, you're going to bend it. Fun fact, currently rack and pinions for 2024 Kia EV6s come in at about $7,700 Canadian.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, retail.
Ouch.
So, operators, the cars are getting trickier. The equipment, required is getting trickier and trickier. So please do yourself a favor, double check things. Like, right, we've talked about advice on those Fords on how to avoid that skirt damage. Keep an eye out on these Kias, because when they fully brick, they lock. Now, it got me talking. My owner and I were talking after doing this damage claim, and went, one thing we've never really looked at, but we might want to inquire about is Go Jacks.
Oh, you've never had Go Jacks?
I've never had Go Jacks. Now, I have been doing my research on Go Jacks, right? Because they've become ever more popular, and you're seeing, off brands and different things like that. Like, we are one that I'd rather get good quality and get it once than buy them 6 times over a 5-year period.
Yep.
But that being said, I see a major flaw with Kojaks. They aren't meant to get a vehicle onto a flatbed.
No, they're not.
They are meant to get a vehicle relocated into a position that you need, whether that be
Yep.
2 winch it on the flatbed, or in shop scenarios and whatnot.
Yep.
So my question is, and before somebody comes at me in the comments, just use skates and like, what is there an off-road version of a Gojak? Like, is there? I have looked and I have been unable to find anything, or unable to find people loading. Is the off-road version of a Gojak a dolly? Right?
You don't have the turning capabilities with a dolly.
You don't have the turning capabilities of a dolly, but if you're going straight on,
Yep.
you don't need the turning capabilities.
I have used a set of dollies to load a car onto a flatbed, and that was just because I had the dollies on the truck from a previous call I did that day.
Mhm.
Like, we don't normally carry dollies on our flatbeds, right?
Mhm.
Just because we never, when we ordered the trucks, they weren't set up to carry dollies,
Mhm.
right? And unless you, from the factory, that truck has a plan to carry dollies, it's very hard to put them in after the fact.
100%.
Right?
It's finding space on flatbeds. We know we pack them full of everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the downfall of it was a larger, I think it was like an older Lexus SUV, so it was fairly wide, right? So I had to have the dollies out on the widest setting just to be able to get it on the car. And you've got like an inch on both sides
With any
wiggle
rails?
room to get it onto the bed. That's without rails on the bed.
Oh, without rails.
Right.
Okay.
So I was doing this in the dark. I didn't have overly amount of like flatbed experience to begin with, at that time.
Mhm.
And it was difficult to get it up there and to get it lined up, because obviously if you got to put dollies on something to get it onto a bed,
Mhm.
you have very limited control of that vehicle to begin with. This thing didn't have the keys, it was locked in park.
Mhm.
It was just a cluster. And I think I had to load it backwards, so the dollies went up first
Mhm.
for some strange reason. And it was pulled into a driveway. So with in between trying to winch it onto the bed and using the steering of the car to try to get it perfectly lined up, and the front tires weren't spinning very well either. I think they didn't spin either. So it was a cluster.
So steering is kind of irrelevant whenever
Yeah,
front tires are just
it's
sliding.
more so to pick the bed up a little bit, move the truck, right?
Mhm,
Just to
mhm,
get the front
mhm.
end to slide over. And then once I got it up there, after I took all my straps down, strapping over top of the dollies with the 8-point tie down, the dolly tires got in the way of the actual straps,
Right.
right?
Right. Mhm.
So it was a royal pain in the ass. Now, this particular call, since I was doing it in the dark and I only worked days, I didn't finish the call. I drove it back to the shop, and another operator finished the call because they were on the night shift and that was the truck they needed to go into.
Right.
So unloading it, I can't remember how well they did it, but I know it was a pain for me to get it on. And then
Well, and that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if people have suggestions on things that I'm not thinking about, because
Mhm.
I'm sure, and again, some people come like, just skate it, no, 100%. But you're starting to see like aluminum A arms and all that kind of stuff, and even on 4 skates,
Mhm.
getting a vehicle up onto a bed with aluminum A arms, you are starting to risk, you know what I mean? Like, we're
Yep.
starting to like a Gojak scenario with a, if somebody's modified one maybe, and that
Mhm.
might be the route that I'm looking at, right?
Mhm.
Like, I've thought about just getting an off-brand cheap set of them to
Yep.
be able to, cut them up and apply what I want to apply to them.
Mhm. You
Because
almost need a second set of Gojaks for your Gojaks. Like a set of Gojaks to go underneath the Gojaks with the little caster wheels with bigger rubber tires that
Mhm.
just pick the standard Gojaks up off the ground a quarter of an inch.
because
So
you
it rolls
don't
up
need
onto the bed
much.
nice. No.
You don't need much, right? Like, I don't need a 6-inch rubber tire or a dolly size tire. I
Yep.
just need like a 4-inch with a little bit of air and some clearance on it, so that when it hits that bed rail, it's not a hard plastic caster,
Yep.
and it doesn't risk pulling the vehicle over top of the Gojak and kicking the Gojak underneath the vehicle. I think it's
Mhm.
something you and I had talked about.
Yep.
So if there is not some, before I start chopping up a set of Gojaks, if
Mhm.
anyone out there has any suggestions, and this is what the towing industry is about, is learning from others' experiences and
Mhm.
and improving yourself. So if somebody does have an idea for these, please let me know. I am open to suggestions. I mean, they have the robot that picks up the car and it can just put it on the bed, but and I'm not saying that's not a solution. Right?
But that's got to be probably $100,000 piece of equipment easily, if not
Easily, I
more.
would think.
It'd
Now,
probably be even closer to 150.
what I get a kick out of, and this is something topic wise that I wanted to bring up. This was the video I was referring to in the beginning. Is that I seen a video of a technician who was doing brakes on a vehicle, and he had this handy dandy little snap-on tool. And what it was is he would put the rotor on, and the rotor would always slide out, kind of like a rim and tire would.
Yep.
Right. And so he had this handy little tool that he would put on, and it would clip onto the stud and just hold, like it was kind of like a, just a metal thing that would click, 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 and it would hold the rotor in place. That's all it was. Fancy, simple little tool.
Yep.
And what it would do is it would help while he was lining up the caliper bracket and everything, hold that rotor in place so that he's not trying to hold it with his knee or whatever.
Yep.
And one of the biggest comments he got every time he showed off a tool like that is, you don't need that. Right? And that is a comment that has been so prevalent in the towing industry for so many years. Right? You don't need that.
You don't need that ball dog.
You're right. You don't need that.
Yeah.
Okay? You don't need impact guns to change tires.
Correct.
Right? You don't need battery powered ratchets if you're a mechanic. Right? You don't need
You
all
don't
these
need a
things.
flatbed. A record can do everything.
Absolutely. All of these things, you're right. You do not need to complete a job. However, I want to complete the job easier and more efficiently. And that is it, when he said that, it stuck with me right away, because how many times have we seen on social media comments like, you don't need a rotator? Back in my day, we did that with two straight trucks and a little bit of ingenuity. And you're right. You don't need it. You don't need an air pump. You could use a bicycle pump.
Yep.
You don't need an impact gun to do your tire changes. You could use a tire iron. But god damn, it makes the job easier. So before we're so quick to dismiss any sort of innovation, right? And somebody can come out, you don't need Go Jacks. You can use this. You can use a little bit of Dawn dish soap on your bed. You know what? You're right. I don't need skates. I could use dish soap 100%, but it makes my job a little more easy and a little more convenient. Right? You don't need, and it's so frustrating, because I find that is the attitude that the industry approaches in so many different ways, right? We talked about it back when we had the back bowl hitch. You don't need that. You can fork off the hitch. You're right. You can. And you're right. I don't need that. But instead of going and getting forks and everything else and ensuring I have proper sizes, I could use this tool. I want this tool. It's going to make life more efficient for me. I don't need skates, but it makes it easier. I don't need dispatch software like TowSoft. But I could do every call pen and paper like we used to. 100%. You don't need it. But goddamn, does it help make your job more efficient and easy. And then you can focus on other things.
Well, it also really depends on who you are. Like, you always got to weigh the pros and cons. Like the debate in between skates and dish soap. Okay, you spread your dish soap onto your bed. Well, you got to clean that up afterwards, right? Instead of Go Jacks, okay, well, it's not as much of a consumable as your dish soap would be. So you got to make sure that you've always got the dish soap stocked up. You'll get that one call and you're like, oh, I need to go to the dollar store first to get some more dish soap. But you always have a set of skates on your truck, as long as you don't lose them, right? Or you can get them out, right? So there's pros and cons to both systems. It's just whatever works out best for you as an operator or the company, right? Dollars to donuts. What is more efficient, right?
But we see that, and I'm okay with that. Right? I'm okay if you want to stick with dish soap. I'm not going to sit there and go, I might tell you, hey, you should maybe look at investing in some skates. But I won't tell you don't need that. You don't.
Well, even skates sometimes have a hard time crawling up the lip of the bed too.
Yeah, you need
it's not a
skate.
It's not a foolproof plan, right? You still got to think outside the bun sometimes and figure your shit out. but I do admit that the using go jacks to try to get up onto the bed itself is a nightmare.
And what if you have the same scenario with a vehicle fully locked up in a gravel parking lot?
Yeah.
Go jacks aren't going to do anything.
No.
Right? Not the current setup. And that's what I'm saying. There's got to be something out there. There's so much innovation. If not, I'm giving somebody $1 million idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm not sure it's $1 million idea. I don't know how many people will buy it, but like an idea to run with. And if you have a product, I will test it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've been here before. If you have a product that you think meets the requirements that I have, I will gladly test it and review it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is so much innovation in the towing industry, as much as we are so behind in the times. And I think a lot of that was caused because of the old school mentality we brought into this industry, where you don't need that. You don't need to be fancy. You don't need to have a remote for your winch. You're right. You don't need a remote for your winch. But do you know how nice it is when you're turning a car out of a parking spot onto your flatbed and you can sit in the car or stand off to the side and steer the vehicle while you winch it?
Yep.
Think about how much easier that would be. Do I need that? No. But that mentality, right? People need to stop looking at it as a, discouraging that kind of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe the towing companies that have become top line, and I talk NRC, Miller, and all that, a rotating tow truck, a rotating boom.
Mm-hmm.
At one point you don't need that. And imagine if somebody would have took that. Well, you know what? Yeah, I guess you don't need that in the industry. You're killing innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Listen to ideas that are coming out. Look at the new technology that is available. And don't forget, you don't need it. You're right. But you can make jobs safer, more efficient. Perfect example, Sonetics. We run Sonetic headsets on all of our heavy recoveries.
Yep.
You do not need Sonetics. I did recoveries for years without Sonetics.
Mm-hmm.
But my God, does it speed up the process.
Yep.
When I don't have to walk 100 meters to go find a guy to tell him a little task that I need him to do, or to check in on something that he's doing, and I can just check right in on him.
Yep.
Right? It makes life so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I have a knock at my door. No, maybe not. Might have been my dog's tail wagging outside the door. But right, when you can communicate something that you need to communicate at a decent distance while working a recovery scene, especially the scale of the one in which we worked the other day, when you've got multiple scenes going on at one time, you don't need it. Right? That is going to kind of be the the mantra of this episode, is that you do not need something.
Well, it was the previous company I worked for. We wanted to implement TowSoft into the company. And when I say we, it was me and the manager.
They did, by the way.
Yeah, we did. But we had extensive conversations with you about this software. And every time you showed us more, we were like, oh, that's badass. Like, we want that. That is cool. That we saw the ability to streamline our jobs and make our jobs more efficient. Especially, well, not necessarily our jobs as drivers, but the back end and the dispatching of jobs, and just make it easier so dispatch doesn't have to send us a text message about a call, and maybe that call's for 2 days from now. And then when it comes to time to do that call, we got to scroll back through all these text messages to try to find,
if you didn't forget about it.
If I didn't forget about it, that information, to where if, okay, I need a tow next week. All right, I'll just plug that into the system and schedule it for that day. And the dispatch gets a reminder, however that actually works. But you've got that call already scheduled in. And with all that information, we went to our owners and we were like, hey, this is what we want. Can you take a look at this? We're on board with this. We want this. And they were able to see the benefits for it as well. And it's just, once you figure it out and you can see a path and an avenue of, oh, that's actually going to work, let's follow this.
Well, if you look currently, like I've actually just opened my TowSoft as you were saying that, how the scheduled calls works, in case you weren't sure on the other side. And I got no problem plugging TowSoft, because again, it's one of those tools. You're right. You don't need, but man, you are going to want. What it does is there is a tab specifically to scheduled calls. So it shows you scheduled calls within the next week in a kind of a standby list. The day that call is scheduled for, at midnight, it auto puts it into the dispatch's standby. So it auto. So like I have, a couple calls scheduled for the 26th. I got 3 for the 26th. So on midnight of the 26th, those 3 calls will go into the standby.
Yep.
And if I have them, I can actually have them pre-scheduled to drivers, pre-dispatched to drivers.
Oh, wow.
On a set time of my choice. So what will happen is they'll get a little ding that says, hey, you have a scheduled call coming. Like, a scheduled call was just assigned to you. Yep. So they can see all the details of the call.
Mm-hmm.
The day of, it'll actually dispatch, depending on the time that I set for it, dispatch to the driver automatically to the truck.
That's just badass.
That's just saving company. That is the difference between forgetting about a customer and not forgetting about a customer.
Yeah, like we've had it. Don't want to say many times, but it has happened before where a call comes in on the weekend and the weekend dispatcher takes it down, and the weekend dispatcher where we worked from home, right? She worked out of a truck a lot of times, worked with one of the drivers, and come Monday morning powwow at 8 a.m. to hand the phones back over to the weekday dispatcher. There's a lot of information that need to be transferred, and sometimes things slip through the cracks, right? And this guy called and asked for a quote, and I gave him a quote, and he was pretty sure, but he's going to call back in and figure it out. No one actually calls the guy to confirm. He was just under the assumption that we were going to show up on the Thursday to do the call, right? But it's just you forget about it, right? It's not pressing. It's 4 days away from now. I can do it later. It's not the thing on Monday morning that I need to take care of immediately. And things obviously slip through the cracks to where if you have a system like this, you punch it into the computer once and the computer will remember it for you.
100%. Like I legitimately have like your scheduled calls. You can do quotations and you give a customer a reference number for a call number. And then that, if they call back onto another shift's dispatch, they go, yeah, I got this reference, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And dispatch goes, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. John, like you're already taking all that information anyways. Why would you take it again?
Yep.
But you're right. I don't need it,
but
I want it. Right. But it's going to streamline things. And again, TowSoft is just one example of that.
We're not sponsored by TowSoft.
No, absolutely not.
We have done sponsorships with them in the past, and that's because they are a company. Yeah, we love what they provide, but they're not paying us to say this.
Now, think about this too. So I have, as your fleet grows, and again, we've had different views on this because you've come from smaller operations. I come from a little bit bigger. But even that being said, even the smaller operation, hey, I got to book this truck in for a maintenance, for a repair on something, for whatever. I will go and look at the scheduled calls and see, before I book this, do I have anything already booked on this truck? Because there's nothing worse to a customer than rescheduling a customer. So if, hey, I can wait till Tuesday, yeah, that's a good thing. I got a job booked for that truck on Monday. Perfect. Now your dispatchers coming into a fresh shift can see, hey, what do we got booked coming up? What do I have for guys? They can start to schedule this stuff along. We're ones, like I've got a bunch booked for Monday morning. There's 1 or 2 for Monday morning. I am not booking them or dispatching them or scheduling them even until almost the night before, first thing in the morning, right? I got a dispatcher in at 6 o'clock in the morning. Most jobs only start rolling at 7, 8, 9. So they will take care of dispatching those at 6 a.m. because as well as I do, this moment you try and schedule a guy, he's going to end up with something else and be gone somewhere else.
Well, the other thing is too, you have, at this point, it's a database of everything going on. So let's say Billy on Friday took 6 calls and they're all going to be scheduled for Monday. Okay, well, that's all your drivers pretty much booked. And you've got another 2 days on the weekend when Tim's dispatching and he's booking calls on Monday too, because he doesn't know that it's already been pre-booked. But with this database, he's like, oh no, sorry, I can't fit you in on Monday, but I can do Tuesday.
Yeah, or I can do a little later in the day, whatever the case might be. 100%. Not to mention, right? Again, and this is the needs, not wants, right? I don't need it, but I want it. Or sorry, it's the wants, not needs. Perfect example, and we've seen it many times in the industry. How many times has a towing company been inconsistent in billing? And now the customer will tell you really quickly, but hey, we just did this job last week for John. And we charged $150, and this time we charge $175, and John wants to know what the hell. Right? This allows you to do that. Hey, I had you guys move this C-can the other day. I'd like to get it moved again. No problem. open the old pass call, create a duplicate. It'll link the calls. So while you're on John's new call, you will see that the call is linked, and you can go back and look at John's old call. So when it comes to the point of billing, you can ensure that if I charge, let's say I charged John last time $145 an hour, I'm not charging him $135 this time. I'm being consistent in my billing.
You also see what truck did it and what driver did it. So you know, if I'm a new dispatcher and I'm coming in and my training was a little lackluster, this system can help pick up some of the slack because I don't know what truck can move a 20-foot sea can loaded full of shit. Well, this truck did it before, and this driver knows what the hell they're doing because they've done it before, and there's no additional comments in the call. Well, I'll just send this driver with this truck again. It's almost idiot-proof at that point.
100%. 100%. So it's really taking the thing. And we've seen that with tools. Like I said, we can go back to the simplification with skates. You don't need skates. But hey, when I get that spot where I'm stuck and I don't want to drag a vehicle across because it's a nice car, I can pound a skate under that wheel and make it do whatever I want. Like there's, you know what I mean? Like different tools or different innovations within the industry have different applications and different wow factors. That's for sure. But the skate was almost one of the simplest ones. It was one of them where I sensed the need. You know, somebody sensed the need and went, oh, okay, what if we made something that went underneath these that was softer than the ground it was being pulled on, that would wear, is a wearable item because it's going to wear, but would save, you know, and elevate to the level. How bad does it look? Okay. Customers, and we've seen this, have a preconceived notion in their head on what a tow truck operator is. The general public has a preconceived notion of what an operator is. And some of this is just going to be optics. Does it hurt dragging a car with its wheel dragging 10 feet? You ain't going to flat spot a tire.
No.
The optics alone behind it. Can it damage something? Yes. Will it? Probably not.
Yep.
The optics behind it, though, right? You see a video surface and you see a tow truck just, you know, winch down and the tires are going as they're dragging across the parking lot and up onto the bed. Everyone would go, that is a tow truck driver. That is what my idea is. So you call for a tow truck and tow truck driver shows up. And the guy just going to drag it and whatever. No. And he sits there and he pounds skates under the tires and he winches it back. And he explains what he's doing at the same time. He gets to his bed. He whacks another skate under the skate to get it up onto the bed. And he skates it all the way up, secures the vehicle, flips around, gets to offload, pounds the skates under the air side, offloads the vehicle nice and smooth. No and no car hopping and no any of that kind of stuff. What does that do for the industry? Holy shit. We've come a long way, right? This isn't what I thought. This isn't Sanford and Son hook a hook and just drag. This is a professional industry that is, you know, and this driver, you compare those two drivers in that same scenario. Which one are you calling again?
Oh, definitely the guy who pounded the skates underneath.
The guy who pounded the skates under it.
I actually got a funny story. Well, it's not necessarily funny, but I was doing my Z endorsement the other week, so now I can drive things with air brakes. Look at me, prove myself. Anyways, this hydro dick was there, and I call all hydro dicks, and he was like, I had a Ford F-150, one of the new ones, EcoBoost. I wanted a 5-liter, but they couldn't give me a 5-liter, and it's got 5,000 kilometers on it, and it shit the bed right in the parking lot, like right in the middle of an intersection. Like it just shut off, locked in park, couldn't get it shifted into park. I was dicking around with it for 3 hours in the middle of this intersection, and I finally just said, you know what? Screw it. I'll get it towed. Right? Tow truck driver showed up, and I'm assuming it was in the middle of the intersection, and he just dragged it onto the bed. Well, this guy said that he freaked out at the tow truck operator. It's like, oh, that's going to flat spot my tires, and you're just going to fuck something up. And I said to him, it's like, well, it's only being drug maybe 20 feet, the back tires. You're not really going to flat spot your tires in that distance. But we do have these things in the industry called skates that you can pound underneath these tires to get it up. Now, is that going to stop the actual wheel pivoting back and forth on the parking pin? No. Is it still going to look not so great? No, it's not going to look great, but it's going to get most of your rubber up off the asphalt. Right? If you got a big tire sometimes and low
put
tire
two
pressure,
together or whatever, and
right. But that is a system that we do have. Now, if you're in the middle of an intersection and now he's got a 20, 30-foot truck blocking traffic.
I'm dragging.
I'm
I'm dragging
dragging. You
9
got to
times
be
out of
quick,
10. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it depends.
On the
Yeah.
off for the offload, you can pound skates underneath of
Yeah,
it
of
because you're in
course.
a parking lot, right? You have more time available, and that's the other thing when it comes to inventions that we have in the industry, the time factor. We're never hooking up the same car in the same spot. And if your nose is out onto a big, busy highway, busy road,
Mhm,
you got to be a little bit quicker, right? So
mhm,
you might not be able to use all these tools that we do have in our toolbox,
mhm.
but the chances are very slim of me causing damages just by dragging this car under the bed. I
Mhm.
need to get out of here because of the
Yeah.
police are yelling at
X,
me,
Y,
I'm
and
blocking
Z. Yeah.
traffic, right? Whatever.
Yeah, of course.
So, as an operator, you're always going to diminish the way you look in the overall goal of getting the car, the customer, and yourself into a safe spot again, right? Because I would rather make this one guy think a little less of me by dragging his car onto the bed than the 50 people stuck on the road that I'm blocking that can't get to their destination. They're like, oh, look at that idiot,
Well,
right?
again, there's risk evaluation and everything like that. Like, I'm
Yep,
not talking about a blocking road, MVC, everything like that. Yeah,
yep,
100%. I've done that with blocking roads, especially in MVC. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna drag it, get it out of the way, and I'll redo everything once I get off into a safe spot.
yeah.
That isn't the argument that's being made here, right?
Mhm,
We're talking about you're just broken down in a parking lot, right?
yep.
What happens on the road stays on the road. Right? What happens in live lanes is a
Yeah.
completely different than what happens in parking lots, driveways, etc.
Mhm. No.
So yeah, no, it is very important to, keep pushing the innovation,
Mhm.
right? And for you guys out there that, are going to go ahead and comment on, some guys post about whatever, you don't need rotators, you don't need whatever it is, the back pull hitch, you don't need this fancy towing software, you don't need any of that stuff.
Mhm.
You know what? You're right. I don't. But it's going to make my job a lot more efficient and easier, and is possibly going to help me with growth in the industry rather than being stuck with my mindset on we've been doing it this way for this long, I don't need to change.
I'm a firm believer. Like I have the headset of I've been doing it this way. I don't want to change. However, I know a lot of you
That's why,
guys out
why
there
you're no
have it.
longer in the towing industry.
However, if a towing company that builds towing equipment or tries to interact with our industry is innovating, don't hamper them. The people you need to hamper is the government coming in and trying to tell you how to do your job.
Well,
Fight back to that change.
on that note, so recently this week, I watched an episode. It was aired on Thursday. It's through a Facebook page. If you haven't gone and joined them, go ahead and do it. Called Southwest Tow Operators,
Mm,
I believe is. Let me just pull it up and make sure I've got the right. Yeah, Southwest Tow Operators.
mm,
There is a show that gets going on called Recovery Alley.
mm,
It is with, and I'm going to Jeff Neenstead. I might have brutalized that name.
mm,
And he does very similar to what we do in a podcast.
mm,
Um, but it's sit back. I don't think it's every week along those lines. But he talks about a job that was recently done by an operator in the States. I'm not sure where it was. Mike Haynes was his guest.
mm,
Mike Haynes appeared on the show discussing a burnt trailer
mm,
job that they did. And it goes back to something that we have started to see in Canada, and I personally have experienced myself.
mm,
And it was a tractor trailer where the tractor unpinned, the trailer fully burnt, or good portion burnt, on
yep,
the side of an on-ramp
mm,
off the fog line, meaning not in a live lane.
mhm,
And this operator, company owner, I believe, attended to
mm,
evaluate the job. Now,
yep,
the job, when you get into these burn jobs, and what some guys don't know, if you've never worked a job of that scale, 90% of that job is salvage,
yeah,
right?
putting
You
it
are
in a bin.
literally taking, excavators, roll off bins, whatever you have, and offloading the load into it because it's a write off.
Yep,
And one of the biggest problems with that is that we are equipped in the towing industry, and even my company is very equipped for a lot of scenarios. A
mm,
scenario of that scale, you are calling in contractors, right? There's
yep,
companies that are dedicated directly to this kind of stuff. We have one that we deal with locally who
mhm,
has pumper trucks, like sucker trucks,
yep,
and roll offs.
yep,
So anytime we get a major cleanup like we did on that wreck that I shared, they are brought in with bins and their pumper trucks to, we will suck fuel out of a tractor. We will not suck fuel on a tank that's been burnt and fire has applied water and solution and everything too, because it's going to screw our system.
Contaminated. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. So we call them in for that kind of stuff. So when you have that, the problem is when you call in a contractor doesn't give a shit when you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. So this gentleman, called one of his buddies who does this kind of thing and said, I've estimated it's probably about $15,000 to $16,000 is what you're going to pay, because there's disposal, plus the equipment on scene and everything else. Right. And he had no guarantee of payment. He was not sure if there was any insurance on this trailer. And because the truck had unpinned, he had no collateral in the truck. So all he had was this trailer full of chicken, like chicken breasts, I understand, like processed chicken. And so he did what so many operators have wanted to do before. And I do apologize, Mike Haynes, if you do hear this, if I'm paraphrasing your operation. You can go back and find Southwest Tow Operators on Facebook. Go back and watch the video. It's on YouTube, I believe, as well, similar to us. Is that he told the officers, and it was a rotation call, that I am not equipped to do this. I am not equipped to financially take a $15,000 to $16,000 risk and not get paid.
You're gambling at that point.
You are, and you are gambling a large amount. And even you are gambling with the opportunity to not double your money, but have about, in Ontario's sake, it's normally about a 15% markup. It could be up to, I believe, 25 down in the States. On that bill is all you're making. Plus you're paying their bill up front. You're waiting to get paid. You're dealing with the insurance. You're dealing with all of that.
Yep.
So he decided to turn the job down. And that is something we have talked about. I've ran into that exact same scenario, just not with a loaded trailer. I've done it with campers. I've done it with, two campers that I've had so far, a motorcycle recovery, nothing quite on that large of a scale.
Yep.
And you're seeing this more and more in the towing industry because these guys are carrying zero to little insurance coverage. You try and get through to an emergency line on a weekend. It's damn near impossible, or on a night, which is when these things happen. If this happened between Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, you have a chance of confirming something with a couple hours delay before you get to the job. Right? The trucking companies will tell you, well, my truck's not pinned to it anymore. It's not my problem. It's my insurance company's problem. Deal with them. You talk to the insurance and they go, well, we cover the trailer, but not the cargo. You talk to the cargo insurance. Like, there's so many insurance companies that are involved in this. And so Mike Haynes, made the recommendation made the decision to not do the work. He ended up doing the job about 4 or 5 days later after spending 4 or 5 days talking with insurance companies. He didn't just say no and let it go.
Yep.
He said, I'm not, I'm a big believer. It's not that I'm saying no, I'm saying not right now.
Yep.
Not until I can confirm something. And that is it was a really good episode to watch. So I really do encourage, again, it's Southwest Tow Operators on Facebook. I really encourage you to go back and watch the episode. They had a little bit of internet connection issues, as we've seen with guests. Guests are not equipped the way we are. So the mic quality is not the greatest. Maybe there's little things like that, but that is what happens when you deal with the public who's not doing a weekly podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you see that in a lot of different industries too, to where, let's take farming with crop insurance. If the crop fails, they have at least insurance on this it's not going to fully
cover the entire
cost,
profit and everything. Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to make them so they're not going to go bankrupt, right? We don't have any sort of safety net for these jobs that we do.
No.
If that's an insurance company that wants to come out and say, I'll insure you, if you don't get paid on a job, I'll pay you out 80%, they would make a killing just off the hop. They would make a killing.
Yeah, like,
The
we need to
rates would
have
be
an
through the
insurance
roof.
company that, like, almost like a collection company that
Yeah.
guarantees our bare minimum rate that we set with them, and then they go after the rest and take a small percentage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of what the insurance companies do. We should do it too.
Yeah, we need an insurance company to fight the insurance companies. Fight on their level.
But no, it's true. And it was a comment that I made on that. And it's something that I've seen before, is that everyone else that responded, the state trooper that responded, the fire department that responded, I don't think there was a need for paramedics because the truck had unpinned from the trailer before it fully engulfed. All of those people, the highway roads people that showed up to close the ramp or whatever may be needed, all of those people showed up with a guarantee of payment. The only ones that show up to these massive, look at that wreck that I did a couple days ago or a week ago, whatever it was. There was fire departments from 3 different stations. There
Yep.
was police on scene. There was Ministry of Environment on scene. There was the roads guys. There was all the like millions of dollars worth of resources were dispatched to this. And the only one that showed up that wasn't guaranteed payment was us. And we are and we are equally as expected to perform and react in the same way that some of these others are. Right?
Yep.
Like I am expected to, when I get the job, to start working on the job. I am not expected to sit back and ask questions.
Yep.
Hey, we need the road cleared. You want to do the job? Okay, we'll go do the job. Well, no, I need to make sure I'm going to get paid. No. Next. Right?
Yep.
We'll just go next.
Yep.
Because somebody will come and clear this road. I get that. But somebody's not going to get paid. And we have seen this. The abandonment rate on light duty vehicles alone is 30% in Ontario. Right? On these trucks, I still have trucks. And now I've got a burnt truck, I've got a burnt trailer, and I've got a burnt cargo. The value in that is $0. It is the scrap weight, if that you will get for that vehicle. So what is stopping a trucking company from just, especially if it's a small operation, right? If you're talking these trans fleets, these massive companies, little less concerned. Their insurance company, because they deal with so many claims, is going to be a lot tougher on you.
Yep.
But there will be payment being made. A little mom and pop operation, right? With maybe 2-3 trucks, burn, this thing happens. I'm shutting down the company. I'm not putting a claim through my insurance, and I'm reopening under something else.
Yep.
Because I'm not going to pay the $30,000-$40,000.
Yep.
Right? Plus the value of the truck and everything else. Because my deductible is $50,000, and it's only going to cover me for another $50,000. And at that point, my premiums are going to it's insane. But we are still expected to respond. So again, do I need guarantees to get payment? No. But I'm really going to want them. And it's going to make my job a lot more efficient and my company a lot more profitable when I get them.
Yeah. Well, I've had it before to where I've showed up to do police calls and you're like, oh, the company's not getting paid for this.
I'm not getting paid on this.
Yeah. So I'm not getting paid for this. So then your quality of work goes to the shit because you're like, I'm just doing this for charity. Right.
But see, in light duty though, guy, it never really
I know, but it's that easy
in
mentality
light duty
to
stuff.
get
It's
into.
a mentality, yes. But if you actually look at the business and donuts to dollars, right? Like you talked about dollars to donuts, whatever. If you look at the value of sending out a light duty resource to go grab a car that you're never going to get paid for and throw it against the scrap value of that car that you're going to get, right? Provided this isn't a, down a rock cliff and everything else. We're talking like a,
you're going to lose maybe 50%, right?
Off the profit.
Yeah.
You go, so 50% off a $300 call, let's say you're going to lose $150. Right? Companies can absorb that. They shouldn't have to. I don't want that being clear, but as long as this isn't 100 of these a day, the company can absorb that. When you're talking $15,000 in subcontractors, $1.1 million trucks, plus the labor of the guy that goes with it, because again, these operators are paid more than guys that are doing just lighter duty tows, all that kind of stuff. You throw all that cost, your loss is exponential compared to doing a car that you have, right? I think that's where we start. I think that's where we start to push is on the little stuff, because it's just much more like it happens much more often. And again, depending on where you are, like if you're contracted with a police department, there could be clauses in there that require you to do the removal no matter what. Right? You may not have that option to opt out of it. Right? So you got to know your contracts and have an understanding of them. When it comes to us with provincial police, there is no contracts. Unless you're in these pilot zones, there's contracts there, I'm sure. I know there's contracts. I just don't know if there's that you.
But you can also run into issues, because I've worked for a couple of different companies to where the owners are kind of hands off, right? So as a driver, you show up, you are the one making the judgment calls, right?
Which is scary.
It is scary to it's already scary enough to, as a business owner, to say, I'm going to let you drive around in a $100,000 billboard and represent my company. You are the face of my company anytime you have an interaction with someone, let alone now you're making decisions and billing practices on how much the company is going to be making, right? And it's a lot to still into a driver that could be new, might only be 6 months in. You don't know if they're a company man or not, or company woman. They might not have your best interests at heart, and they could be like, well, the company's not getting paid, so fuck it. I'm just not going to do it, which is the wrong way of going about it. Instead, you could, dive into it, make a few phone calls before you do something, right?
Well, that's
Get
it.
a
I
bit
think
more information about it instead of just saying, nah, fuck it, I'm out of here.
I think that's one where, yeah, no matter what, you can't make that decision on your own as a driver, right? I have a problem with, like, you've got to put certain trust into drivers and employees to make decisions, right? But your decision making ends at a certain point. Whenever it comes, your decision making applies to how you are safely going to tow and recover this vehicle. Like, that is what we've trained into our employees. The decision of walking away from a job or having potentially major effects on a company one way or another is not up to the drivers or employees' discretion, right? That is up to management, supervisors,
but a
ownership.
lot of companies haven't drawn that line in the sand, or that line is very murky, right? A lot of places are just, especially once you get into the smaller operations, it's,
of course,
you put more trust in the drivers because, oh, well, Billy Bob Joe's not going to screw me because, I make sure he's got food on his table for his family. But maybe Billy Bob Joe's having a bad day. You never know.
Well, and it happens, and that's always going to happen with operators. They have bad days just like the rest of us. Everybody has bad days, and not everyone's always going to make the right decision. So that being said, we thank you for joining us for another episode of the Towing Life Podcast, episode 150. Again, on behalf of myself, I apologize personally for not doing the live. We will try and reschedule at a better time. It is a good time to mention. Don't forget to head over to the website, www.towinglife.ca. Find your merch. There's a contact us link there. Email us at thetowinglife@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. If you are watching over on the YouTube side and you've made it this far, don't forget to comment down below. I am serious. I need recommendations for an off-road GoJack. And there is somebody in this industry that has come up with something and I want to hear about it. So on behalf of myself and my wonderful co-host, Mr. Towman G, we thank you for joining us for another episode. And don't forget, it's not what you need, it's what you want. Take care.
Toodles. It's not what you need, it's what you want.
I don't know if that was right, but
fucking. Have you told that saying to your wife yet?
Listen, my wife had a massive steak. Like, she sent me to do groceries yesterday while I was hungry.
Oh, that's bad idea.
Not like full groceries, but like I had to get some stuff for dinner. I ended up with like these like 3-inch thick steaks, asparagus, these curry ball things that I bought.
You spent $100 at the grocery store.
I spent $100 on like a one paper bag. It was so good though. It was so